Hello and welcome to the Unique CPA with your host, Randy Crabtree. We're committed to creating a thriving community of accounting professionals who are physically and mentally healthy, fulfilled, and energized by their work. Our ultimate goal is to elevate the reputation of the accounting profession and vastly improve the lives of those in it. The Unique CPA is brought to you by Tri-Merit, the specialty tax professionals.
Today our guest is Geof Brown. Geof is the not too many months ago, newly appointed president and CEO of the Illinois CPA Society. Geof and I have had a few discussions in the past. Really looking forward to our conversation today. So, Geof, welcome to the Unique CPA.
Thanks for having me, Randy.
Yeah, this is a topic and a podcast that I've been wanting to do. I haven't felt qualified to do. I'll give a little tease to the audience before we get into it, but we're going to be talking about DEI today. A lot of it's going to be based on a report that the Illinois CPA Society did last year, and just in general, we'll get into topics. But before that, let's learn a little bit more about you. December of 22 is when you took over the role?
Yeah, I started December 5th, so just over 6 months, 6 months and 10 days. Who's counting?
Wow.
But it's been good. It's been good. You know, we had the requisite transition period, but fully at the helm since early February.
All right. And then you took over for Todd Shapiro, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And how long was
Society? About 24 years.
Yeah, so that was so you're the first new person in that position in a long time.
But it's a role that I'm used to. So in my prior job, I was the first person after someone who'd been there for almost 30 years.
Oh,
So it's not new to me to follow someone who's been a fixture in an organization.
well, I think you're well suited for it. What was that last organization?
It was the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, so all fee-only CFPs. So not the same as CPAs, but adjacent. Some of the same macro level issues, but a great community of professionals.
All right. So I teased a little bit of the topic we're going to talk about today, DEI. This is a topic that has come up a little bit on the podcast before. We haven't done a whole episode on it, and I'm guessing you and I will go on tangents because that's part of this podcast. We go on tangents as well.
Like it.
But what I did mention is that the society did do a report last year, the CPA Diversity Report, subtitled "Uncovering the Barriers to Success." So you want to give us a little background on that report?
For sure. So, we've been doing the Mary T. Washington Wiley internship prep program for the last 11 years. And so over that time, we've developed this community of alumni that, are still connected to the society, working in various facets of the profession. And we thought it was a good opportunity for us to mine that audience, to think about ways that we can enhance and refine our programming. But in the course of that, we uncovered some good information that we shared in the report. So it's really based off of both quantitative and qualitative research with that alumni community and their experiences in and around the profession.
Okay. And then Mary T. Washington Wiley, why don't you I think this is really interesting, her background. Can you give us a little information on her?
Yeah. So Mary T. Washington Wiley became the first African-American female CPA in the United States in 1943. That was a time when, there weren't a lot of opportunities for women. There definitely weren't a lot of opportunities for African-American women. She created a thriving firm, Washington, Pittman and McKeever. It's one of the largest Black CPA firms in the country. It's now part of Mitchell Titus, carrying on her legacy. But, it's really pointing to the fact that Chicago was a hotbed of African-American CPAs throughout the better part of the 20th century.
Awesome. 1943. Okay. Well, we are celebrating the 80-year anniversary this year then.
That's correct. We got to talk about her as part of the what would have been her 100th birthday. That's when we established the Mary T. Washington Wiley Opportunity Fund. One of her business partners, Lester H. McKeever, was instrumental in getting that fund online. And that's what's been able to underwrite a lot of the programs that we've done as a society in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space.
And let's get into a little bit of, because I've noticed this. My last 16 years in this profession has been through supporting the profession through what we do, which is specialty tax. And really the last 16 years, for the first 12 of that, I pretty much was mainly almost always dealing with top 400 CPA firms.
Okay.
And so in that arena, I'd be at conferences and association events and state society events and well, more so the associations that are encompassing those top 400. And I would constantly look around. I'm saying, everybody here looks like me.
Mm.
How is that? How is that we don't have, and that's at that level. I've since seen it at the smaller levels a lot more. This is my impression, a lot more DEI at the, $1 to $5 to $1 to $10 million level firm this is what my impression is. But at this larger firm level or in general, how do we get someone like me who I am now from this new group I've been part of, but wasn't used to this DEI? How do I start addressing that? Little things like, and I think you and I talked about it even before, I get confused. You said African-American earlier in our discussion already. Somewhere else in the report, it says Black. Somewhere else in the report, it says minority. Just from even a talking standpoint, how do I know what I'm supposed to say?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. And I think everybody needs to acknowledge that we're all going to be at various points on the spectrum related to our knowledge and comfort when it comes to DEI work. So I always like to tell everyone, just dive in with the understanding that it's not going to be perfect. Most DEI work is messy, whether you're focusing on your own education, relationships, thinking about how you can move the needle individually, or you're doing it from a firm perspective. You should also think about how you can be open, honest, direct, and respectful when you're, trying to learn more. I think that's the biggest way that you can invite others into this journey that you might be on.
Okay. And let's go back to the report. So that helps me. Let me expand on that, because I have the last 4 years, I've really got to know these, what I call modern startup firm. I don't know what the right terminology is, but I have met so much more diversity, so many more diverse audience crowd, from whatever standpoint in this arena that I didn't experience. And nothing against top 400. I love those people. I've had fun. It just seems to be the lack of diversity in there. And I know your report even will talk about that a little bit, but I'm hopeful from a standpoint that I see the younger group, at least this is what I'm seeing right now, this younger, more modern startup firm group has more diversity, a lot more inclusion, and the equity part, I assume, but I can see the diversity, I can see the inclusion part, and just the audience that I'm hanging out. So I don't know if you see a difference between large firms or smaller firms at all.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference. The larger the firm, potentially the more resources you have to devote to DEI work, but then you also probably have more human resources that you're dealing with. So it looks like there isn't as much representation, on a percentage basis.
Right.
We are moving the needle, albeit incrementally. But one of the things that I noticed back in my old financial planning days was that these upstart firms were actually filling themselves with the mindset of, we are going to be diverse, we are going to be more equitable, we are going to be a more inclusive place, but they were staffing with people who had experiences in larger enterprises. So I think, looking at accounting firms, you're probably staffing up with people that worked Big Four or smaller, and they're taking those experiences and they're applying them to these new workplaces.
Yep, I can see that. Right when you said that, one individual that I'm great friends with, I love her. She does an awesome job. In fact, she's going to be on a webinar that I'm hosting a week from tomorrow. Elnisha Jones, she came from Big Four. She was on the partner track there. Wasn't sure it was for her, had young kids, decided that wasn't the path she wanted in life. And so what she did is she went out, worked in industry for a while, realized that wasn't it either. And then and I've said this, I think, on the podcast before, became an accidental firm owner. Wasn't really the plan, but she has, and I can't talk about this enough. She has such an amazing story. She's built this firm that, employees are first, that, sets boundaries with clients, but that also everybody that works with her is a working mother. And everybody that works there. And she's been so successful. She was just named, whatever the list that recently came out, 50 most powerful women in accounting. And her story is great. So she had that experience you talked about, coming from the Big Four, and then went out and started her own. And so maybe that's why I'm seeing it more. It's like, okay, they have this experience, they want to do things different, they have their own ideas, and boom. I've had many people have that same trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, it can be incredibly daunting. So I've spent the last 6 months, meeting with firm managing partners, members, and that's a consistent story that I've heard. I was a member of an underrepresented population, or I am a member of an underrepresented population. I worked in a larger enterprise. I saw two people that looked like me, or three people that looked like me. We became spokespersons for everyone that was from a diverse background. We were in charge of doing all the diversity recruiting. And that can become incredibly daunting and
Yeah.
become a barrier to retaining those individuals in public accounting.
Yep. Well, let's dig into the report then, because what are the insights that stand out to you, or what are the things that you see that stood out that was like, okay, there's a big gap here. Here's what we need to address, or even the positive. So why don't you go into, you can talk for the next 20 minutes if you want on the report, and just give us all the insights that you've learned from it.
Yeah, I mean, there are three top line takeaways that jumped out at me. And, granted, this was released before I was hired. So I'm, looking at it from afar, and I've become acquainted with it over the last 6 months. But, really, that first one of the lack of DEI being perceived as a barrier. So, to me, that points to an overall issue with representation. If I enter a firm and I don't see anyone that looks like me, I'm automatically going to be on edge.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're dealing with a situation where everybody went to, one of the big name accounting schools, or, they're from similar towns, they had similar experiences. That can just exasperate that feeling of being, one in a sea of many. The fact that our alumni community felt handicapped by their backgrounds, to me, that points to a lack of inclusivity. Thinking about our issues with acquiring new talent into the profession, I think we're mixing kids that go to the top tier schools with, some of those second and third tier schools. And, those experiences can be very different. You may not have the same academic rigor in your undergraduate and graduate studies. You may not be treated the same when you think about working with management that also went to one of those schools. So feeling handicapped by that background can be something that individuals look at as potentially holding them back, and delaying their development as professionals. And then I think the third thing that stood out to us most was this belief that they're receiving inadequate feedback and development. The system in public accounting is really geared towards focusing on the highest performers and those with the perceived most potential to move to higher levels. And if you don't get into one of those seats, then you probably won't get the support and the development that you need to really grow as a professional. But on this one, I think there's something a little bit deeper. So we asked a couple of questions, and this is no knock on the older white gentleman in the room, but not coming at the kind of that supervisory role from a place where you feel comfortable, you feel empowered to give the good feedback, give the right feedback, give developmental feedback to those resources that report to you that are coming from diverse backgrounds. I think a lot of it is dealing with a lack of comfort,
Mm-hmm.
fear that the feedback may be taken the wrong way, not having that cultural competency to be able to deliver it in a manner that's going to be effective. But all of those are solvable. No one should feel like they're not getting the right level of feedback and development in the workplace.
Yep. I think that would be extremely important. And if there's this uncomfort level because of not knowing how to, you feel uncomfortable of are you the one that can help with the DI? And then now how do I give feedback? I don't know. Yeah, the whole thing. But so are you working on like putting programs in place or training, or what's going to be the result of this report? What's the next steps?
Yeah, so we're actually working right now, and this is just kind of a behind the scenes glimpse into what we're working on.
Ooh.
We're working on we're calling it Mary T 2.0 at this point. It's probably about 6 to 8 months, maybe longer, away from being brought online. But, we're really utilizing some of the learnings from the report to come up with some tailored solutions for our alumni community and other individuals from underrepresented populations. So we want to make sure that we're providing them with superior mentorship opportunities, access to professional coaching, maybe access to some of the skills development that they may have been lacking or missing because they potentially didn't have that same rigorous program of training before they entered the profession. So things like data analytics, something as little that could seem as little as Excel training. I was talking with a partner at a big four firm, and he had, two individuals. One went to a top tier school. One went to a smaller program. And, the one thing he said about the individual from the smaller program was that developmentally, they just weren't at the same level. And one thing that he cited was their Excel usage. And that's something that's very, very solvable.
Mm-hmm.
So to the extent that it's possible for us to be able to provide those opportunities and those resources for these individuals, we want to make sure that we're doing it.
Okay. And I'm just looking at some of the statistics. I'm gonna do a really bad segue here because I'm now just gonna go back into these statistics we were talking about. But the lack of diversity in the profession, I was just looking at the census, U.S. Census, the U.S. population, 12.4% Black from the 2020 census. The U.S. CPA population for the Black community, 2%. I mean, that's huge, huge. There's obviously an issue there when we have that much of a gap between what the population is. And same thing with let's see, the Hispanic and Latino, 18.7% for CPAs, just 5%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are the two that stand out for me for sure.
And, it's interesting when you think about the fact that, the CPA profession has been focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion far longer than some of the other professions, definitely longer than financial planning, that's for sure. So it was very surprising to me to see what the numbers really are relative to the population. And so it says that, maybe we need to pull back a little bit. Think about what we're doing and maybe try some things that, maybe a little different, maybe a little unconventional. I think what we're proposing with Mary T 2.0 potentially is one of those things, getting more personalized. Yes, it's a heavier lift, but I think that's the type of individual attention that could potentially move the needle. And when you couple that with our overall issues from a talent perspective, we have to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Individuals from diverse populations are not going to solve everything that we're dealing with from a talent shortage.
Okay, and then the next, I like statistics, and so I'm reading the report, and these are actually places I highlight on the report. And the report's great, and people can get the report on the website, I assume.
That's correct. www.icpas.org.
Oh, you said it right. Not IPACs.org. ICPAC is that? Wait, yeah, it would be ICPAC, wouldn't it? All right.
It does sound like a small illness.
It does not roll off the tongue. AICPA seems to. I don't know why ICPAC doesn't. Though there is no. I don't say ACPA or whatever the AICPA would be. So all right, we'll stick with that. But the one positive I think I'm taking out here, and I think I'm reading this right. At least it looks like. Not that much, but accounting graduates at least seem to be trending up a little bit in those.
I think so. We're moving in the right direction. The thing that we have to remember is that, this was 2022, 6 months ago, a little longer than that. It's probably about this time last year when we started thinking about the research, but yeah, trending in the right direction. We still need to do more.
Yep.
That's always the message that we're delivering is yes, but we need to do more.
Yeah. And then the other thing is when we're looking at statistics, it's actually, as we go in the profession, it's probably not trending that way because 59% of graduates are white in going into the profession and 82% of partners are. So, there's that's still trending towards, I don't know if the word's favoritism, but that's just, or who sticks around, or they, like we talked about, people aren't sticking around because they are not feeling that they are adequately coached or judged or comfort level. And I assume that's another area that you're looking to address with the whole Mary 2.0.
That's one of the things that I'm most interested in is, what is it that sets when you have like 5 young professionals, moderately similar backgrounds, meaning educationally, socioeconomic, things of that nature. They get into the profession working in very similar firm settings. what is it that sets one up for success versus another, and gets one on the track to becoming a partner, entering leadership, versus someone who's, one, two, three, and done and bounces out. So really trying to uncover, the disparity between those experiences. Was it, I had a great manager, I had great opportunities, I felt more comfortable, or I'm just really thick skinned and I stuck it out because I felt like I had to,
Right.
because I didn't want to do a disservice to those that came before me.
Yep.
The latter is admirable, but no one should have to put themselves through an experience like that.
No. Let's talk about that, because I find that pretty interesting, what you just said, because, all right, I'm just going to stick it out. I'm just going to power through it. I'm just going to, or I personally want to do everything I can to be the change. The problem with that is sometimes that individual, and there's many individuals, gets a lot of pressure put on them, I'm sure. And our profession already starts with a lot of pressure. It's just, I think we can change that. But you and I talked before, and I think, that's a big, big push of me, is just talk about mental health in our profession, about ways we can, avoid burnout. And I think that based on what you just said, that could be a pressure that just adds on to someone else's tax season pressure and cause more mental health or burnout type issues. Is that something you think you've seen, or is that something the ICPAC, did I say it right, is going to address as well?
I think that through some of the work that we're attempting to do, I think we'll be touching on that. Top line, you're right. The system was never designed to be supportive of one's mental health, which is unfortunate.
Yep.
I think the pandemic kind of flipped that script a little bit. But what we need to do collectively as a profession is not fall back into our old tendencies. And some of the other conversations we're having, I think, people are looking for a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more space and grace. And when you think about this population and the issues that they're dealing with in the profession, it's incredibly daunting to be, that lone island in a sea of sameness.
Right.
If I'm looking around and I'm one of a few, or only the one, it can be incredibly isolating. When you're feeling alone, but you still have to go through the motions of getting your work done, it can really raise some serious mental health concerns. When you couple that with the demanding nature of the work is demanding. Nobody's gonna lie. No one should get into public accounting and not want to do work hard. We're not trying to debate that, but we can do our people a better service by being cognizant of the effect that it could have on their mental health, their psychological safety, and make sure that they have the resources they need to deal with those issues before they become a problem. So access to employee assistance programs, good training for people managers to be able to identify the signs of burnout and, deploy people in other fashions to support that. Not saying that people shouldn't work hard, but we need to be paying attention to their overall mental health, because at the end of the day, we're in a business that what's our greatest asset? It's our people. And if they can't show up, work hard, be good contributors, and bring a lot of value to our clients, then they're not the asset that we need.
Yep. I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed a lot in our profession. I'm a huge proponent to corporate culture. I think that's the most important thing. It is just treating people right, treating people fairly, making people feel all important, including the team, all working together, but diverse, not even from what we're talking about, but just diverse in general. I mean, there's no way my business or our business would be successful if everybody was me, because it's just, it wouldn't happen. We'd never get any work done. I mean, there'd be no work get done. And so we need people that, have all these different personalities on top of everything.
100%.
So, the diversity obviously is like we're talking about, but overall, I mean, from a diversity standpoint, sometimes I think people look at, and this could be an issue, but I think, I'm going to hire that person because, I mean, we have fun together and we're so similar. And that can be part of the issue because that is not going to help your firm overall. I don't know if from an overall diversity up and above, like we talked about the Asian community and the Latin community and the Black community, just overall diversity as well. Is that a bigger picture item that needs to be addressed?
I think so. I mean, when you think about the inclusive actions towards employees, that we can take, they're really going to reduce that sense of exclusion. And they can potentially diminish a sense of belonging. So when people don't feel like they belong, they're not going to work hard. So when an employee feels like they can be their authentic professional self, notice I say authentic professional self.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants Weekend Jeff to show up at the Illinois CPA Society.
Well, I'll argue with that though in a minute. So you say it, but I'll tell you. Maybe I'm not arguing with you, but I'll tell you what I think.
We want them to have a high degree of workplace satisfaction.
Yeah.
We want them to find meaning in their work, and when people are satisfied and they find meaning, they're less likely to be vulnerable to conversations about going somewhere else.
Yep.
And I think that that's really the defining factor. It's like that people first culture,
yes,
embracing real diversity and understanding, the benefits that come along with that. We're all trying to create these high performing organizations. And the best way to do that is to make sure that people feel included, appreciated, and valued for what they bring to the table. And that's, I think, a cornerstone of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yep. No, you said it well. And I'm not arguing because we may be saying the same thing, but I want Weekend Jeff to be part of this organization because Weekend Jeff's probably a lot of fun, and I want to, and I'm going to ask you in a minute about Weekend Jeff because I want to know what your outside of work life is, because I think if you do that, if everybody gets along from a standpoint that you find too, like I love basketball, I love playing basketball, although I can't anymore, stupid knees, but I like that. I love hiking. I love this. And if I am allowed to share who I am at work, I think that just solidifies our relationships at work. And if we are working together because we love each other, because we have such fun together, because we know our outside of work passions, I really think that energizes the office more. So that's what I meant.
I agree with you completely on that front.
I figured you did.
I think about the fact, I'm not a young guy, but early on in my career, I didn't feel that I could do that. I felt like I had to come to the office, I had to conform, I had to be a part of the machine, and that was how I was going to contribute. That was how I was going to advance. Looking back on that wasn't a service to the organizations that I've worked for. It definitely wasn't a service to me, and it wasn't a service to those that are part of the weekend life, if you will.
There you go.
Just because that compartmentalization that sometimes individuals feel like they have to do ends up contributing again to some of those mental health challenges, because you're not able to fully talk about all of the experiences that you're involved in, positively or negatively. And so you end up just being isolated. And, I feel like the Surgeon General has just been talking about, the sense of loneliness that, Americans are feeling, and how that's like the next greatest public health crisis. And so we need to do something to address that.
All right. Well, I think that was awesome. Building in the mental health with the DEI, with the Weekend Jeff, and which we'll find out more about in a second. But before we do that, why don't you give us a kind of wrap this up? Kind of give us your goals, your whatever the learning points you want us to get out of what we talked about today.
Yeah. No, thanks, Randy. I think there's a couple of things. One, as a profession, we need to identify the actionable ways that we can promote inclusion in the profession that goes beyond some of the elements of diversity that you can only see. So we've been focusing a lot on race and ethnicity. We need to broaden that perspective a little bit. Just because, we may be leaving some things on the table and leaving people behind. So that's one piece. When you think about this profession, I talked about it a little bit. Our people are really the backbone of all of these organizations. And so we need to be cognizant of the benefits they bring to the table beyond the transactional nature of any work that they do for us. And we really do have a great opportunity to reframe the model. And so we just need to take advantage of it and really have an intentional conversation about what the future of the profession is going to look like from a diversity standpoint, an equity standpoint, and an inclusiveness standpoint.
Perfect. I think that was a great wrap. Now the biggest question is, I want to hear about Weekend Geof. What are your passions? What do you enjoy doing when you're not running the how many thousands of CPAs that are hanging out in Illinois? What are your outside of work passions?
So, when I'm not being president and CEO of the Illinois CPA Society, I'm an avid runner. So I'm training for my 17th marathon. Right
Wow.
now, I do a lot of cooking, travel, some boating. So last night we were actually out on Lake Michigan for the fireworks. That's one of the best things about summer in Chicago is just being out on a boat on a Wednesday night with friends and enjoying the views of the city. And, we always have a great fireworks display every Wednesday and Saturday. So I just like being outside and spending time with my family.
Nice. That's awesome. And then if anybody wants to find out more about Illinois CPA Society or ICPAC or however we said it, we're going to go with Illinois CPA Society, or you or this report, where would they reach out?
They can contact our office or they can visit our website. It's www.icpas.org.
All right, perfect. Well, Geof, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on today and educating me on DEI.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, Randy. It's been fun.
Thank you for joining us today on the Unique CPA. You can find the show notes for today's episode and learn more about Tri-Merit at theuniquecpa.com. Remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating on your favorite podcasting app. And join us next time for more expertise and insights on the Unique CPA. Professionalproductions.net